Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China. Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
Internet. Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. It's midweek. We got a show for you, so let's dive in. Look, we're gonna do a recap of yesterday's, some of yesterday's Supreme Court nominee hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. A lot of fun moments on that if you're into absolute insanity. Perhaps even some
sexual anarchy.
No, probably not. Anyway, we're going to have fun. We're going to go over Ted Cruz, of course. We got Fox News talking about that. We got Tom Tillis bringing out the old Glenn Beck charts. That's fun, you know.
I'm a fatty fat though.
Yeah, so that guy, yep, we've got some charts. We got interracial marriage, specifically Republicans accidentally admitting, oh yeah, you know what we'd like to do? Hand that back over to the states. Fun. Now, we also, I'm going to give you an update here on the trucker convoy that is still happening. Still happening. Isn't this amazing? And then, True Social. What's going on with True Social? I'm going to talk about it. So, we have all sorts of fun planned today, all sorts of insanity. So, we're going to dive in. Before we do, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. I can only do this and make fun of right-wingers with your help. And so, please like and share, become a member, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. And I thank you all for doing so. All right, that said, y'all, let's start with some Ted Cruz insanity and some racist babies. All right. The confirmation hearing for Ketanji Brown Jackson has been turned by Republicans into a complete and total clown show. In fact, during the second day of hearings, Senator Ted Cruz decided that he was going to bring up the issue, the often cited issue of critical race theory, and talk about racist babies.
Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Another portion of the book, they recommend to babies confess when being racist. Now, this is a book that is taught at Georgetown Day School to students in pre-K through second grade, so 4 through 7 years old. Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
What? I'm sorry, what? Okay, so incredibly disingenuous framing here from Ted Cruz. Obviously, the book, and look, Ted Cruz gave it away already, where it said, oh, babies can be taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. So think about it this way, right? So look, children, when they're brought into this world, they're not inherently racist. No one is inherently racist. And so what happens is that as a person goes through life, their accumulated experiences, what they've been taught, the society that they're in, can teach people certain things, certain values, right? And look, a lot of people go through life with some assumptions. A lot of people don't really factor race into a whole lot of things, unless, of course, they're exposed to how race does get interjected all throughout society and has some very big impacts. Now, I say a lot of people, actually a lot of white people don't consider race at all. Now, when it comes to black people, race is very much on their mind because they end up dealing with a lot of things related to the color of their skin. And so, there's that. Now, Ted Cruz, being a white Canadian, has never had to deal with anything related to racism, right? And so it's easy for him to come back and say, oh, I can't believe they're teaching kids about race. And I actually have them go and apologize and confess when they're racist, when they do something racist. Now, it's super weird, right? So bad framing, but framing that is bad on purpose, because of course it gets the Pavlovian reaction from the people who are in the Republican Party, who are, some who happen to be racist. Yes, and happen to think about this a lot. I know. But okay, so now, let's go to how Brown Jackson responded to this charge of racist babies. Take a look.
I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist or though they are not valued or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that. But what I will say is that when you asked me whether or not this was taught in schools, critical race theory, my understanding is that critical race theory as an academic theory is taught in law schools, and to the extent that you were asking the question, I understood you to be addressing public schools. Georgetown Day School, just like the religious school that Justice Barrett was on the board of, is a private school.
All right, so that's very clear, right? And I love how she answers that question, and I love how she stays cool, calm, and collected in the face of, obvious ridiculousness, right? Yes, she's right. Critical race theory, not taught in K through 12. It's taught in college-level courses. And by the way, this book is not critical race theory, for one. It's, again, anti-racism, which, by the way, everyone should be anti-racist. Because if you're not anti-racist, what does that make you? It makes you pro-racist. I don't think you want to be pro-racist. But anyway, look, she's like, obviously, I don't believe that any child should be made to feel as though racism is their fault. It's not. It's not. There are systems of oppression that are left over from the institutions of slavery and Jim Crow. Those institutions exist. Nobody's blaming white kids for that are born, okay? Nobody's blaming the children that are in school. But that doesn't mean that you can't raise awareness or teach them about these things that exist, because they do exist. But the whole thing about Republicans and critical race theory is we don't want to show them that it exists. Because we are either embarrassed about it, or two, we want to continue these systems of oppression. Because we happen to have gotten, I don't know, in positions of power as a result of those systems of oppression. And so, look, the whole thing is culture war du jour, right? And this entire thing, understand, has been planned out ahead of time. There was a tweet that was tweeted out yesterday about this time where, and this was by the official GOP Twitter account, and basically it was a picture of Ketanji Brown Jackson with the word critical, or CRT, standing for critical race theory, right next to her head. Gee, I wonder if this whole thing has something to do with the midterm elections. Look, the elections in Virginia, and the reason that they're pushing this, of course, is that this showed how critical race theory, the whole idea of like, oh, parental rights, resonated with Republican voters. They turned out, they voted for Glenn Youngkin, and so now they're using that as a playbook. Okay, we're just going to push critical race theory, like this hysteria about critical race theory, all over. We're going to push it in every way that we can in order to try to repeat what happened in Virginia. And so that's what's going on, right? Now, of course, the cover for that is, oh no, we believe in parental rights. We think critical race theory takes that away and makes children feel guilty and bad. Ironically, the Republican Party is pushing bills that punish parents of trans children who give them support and gender-affirming health care and mental health care. What happened to parents? What happened to the rights of parents? What happened to supporting parents? Oh, right. Yes, of course. See, being a good parent and supporting your transgender child, well, the Republican Party, they look at it and they say, we hate it. Oh, he hates it so much. No, you must be a horrible parent to them. You must completely crush them if they're a trans person. And if you don't, we're going to put you in prison. But if you decide that you don't want your children to learn about racism at all, or the history of African Americans in this country and the kind of persecution and discrimination they had faced, well, no, we can't have them learn about that. No. You don't you dare educate them kids. No. We want children to grow up ignorant so that maybe then they can become racist and then vote for Republicans, and we'll continue to win elections. And not only that, but it has the added effect of keeping them fighting over nonsense manufactured culture war issues while the donors continue to pick the pockets of the average American worker. That's ultimately what this is about. The Republican Party, remember, they don't really have an economic message to run on. And so you're seeing culture war, culture war, culture war. As far as Ketanji Brown Jackson is concerned, she is a deeply qualified person. She is incredibly smart. She has handled this clown show with absolute grace and professionalism. Despite again, these questions that were clearly designed, these lines of inquiry that were designed to basically irritate everyone, especially her. And look, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and a lot of these Republicans that were doing these lines of questioning, they were running the clown show and are essentially the ringmasters of the GOP circus. So, all right. Oh, but we have more. We've got, of course, the Fox News hosts over at Fox and Friends that were very impressed. Not by Ketanji Brown Jackson, of course, but by Ted Cruz. Let's get to that. All right. In their coverage of the confirmation hearing of Ketanji Brown Jackson, Fox News specifically Fox and Friends hosts, Lindsay Earhart and Brian Kilmeade, gave some praise to Ted Cruz for bringing up critical race theory. Yeah, of course. Now, critical race theory, of course, is a graduate level curriculum in law school that looks into the influence of past racial discrimination and how that impacts the current opportunity and equity for people of color in this country. So now, the Republicans have taken this and have decided to make it seem as though critical race theory is taught through K through 12 school, which it's not, and that it means white people bad. So they've applied this moniker to anything that involves Black history and race relations in this country, and as such has become a part of the culture wars, because God forbid a parent or anyone else be made very uncomfortable having to explain why racism exists and why it's bad. So now I'm going to go to Ainsley Earhart here and Brian Kilmeade, who said this.
And then when she comes to CRT, she said she's sitting on a board of a school that actually has CRT in the curriculum when she says it's part of college study.
Georgetown Day School?
Yes.
She said the board doesn't know if they're teaching CRT in the classroom, but every other
good is having a
school, I
board
have
then?
so many friends on boards of school districts, and they do know what's being taught. And Ted Cruz brought out, I think it was Ted Cruz that brought out all these books from that school and said, this is what they're teaching in 2nd grade. This is what they're teaching in 3rd or 5th grade. And it's information I don't want my daughter to learn.
Oh, I don't want my daughter to learn about racism. Oh, okay, well, good news. Georgetown Day School is a private school. So, I mean, you don't have to send her there if you don't want to. I mean, look, all right, even though you probably should send her there so she doesn't grow up to be like Ainsley Earhart. But that's the thing. They want to be ignorant of race relations in this country. They want to be racist. All right, look, if you want to be racist, well, go ahead and be racist, I guess, right? Just be prepared for the backlash. But then, it's not just that, though. They not only want to be racist, but they also want their children to be ignorant and to grow up to possibly be racist. And not just their own, but everyone's kids. They want to keep this stuff, all discussion about race relations, out of the classroom. And just out of society in general. Now remember, these are the same people that have adjusted school textbooks to downplay the evils of slavery in this country. Oh, no, see, the slaves were just helpers, and the slave masters were very, very benevolent. So understand that is the messaging that they have always wanted to put out. And so understand, this ignorance is what they want to spread. This the whole thing that's behind this, right? And look, I can understand, by the way, the people that have been exposed to this propaganda thinking, okay, wait, why are my schools telling the kids that they're racist? Well, first of all, the schools are not telling the kids that they're racist. They're not doing that. And by the way, nobody is inherently racist. Racism is a learned trait. It is learned ignorance, if you will. You have learned something that is just not true. Ignorance is the lack of knowledge about something, and you can learn things. That doesn't necessarily mean it's logic. Doesn't mean it's knowledge, right? You can have all sorts of information in your head that happens to be wrong, counterfactual. And that's what this is. They are trying to fill people's heads with things that are not true. Now, if you're going around and you've got a head full of things that aren't true, well, that makes you ignorant. That doesn't make you a bad person to be ignorant. You just don't have the facts. And so that's what we're doing. Ignorance can be fixed with knowledge. That's it. But again, there are certain people in power and certain politicians, there are certain media figures that do not want you to have that knowledge. Why do they not want you to have that knowledge? Well, because then if you do, you might want to actually do something about the problem here. The problem of, and I'm speaking of racism at this point. Why would they not want you to do that? Well, because there are certain people that have benefited greatly from those systems of oppression. in this country. So look, if people knew about how institutional racism impacts minorities, especially African Americans in this country, well, then generally most people would be in the mind to dismantle or reform those systems. That's it. But what about those who benefit from those systems knowingly, whether it be financially or through, mainly financially, but also through status, right? Well, obviously keeping those people in their place is better for them. And understand that this is who Ainsley Earhart and the rest of the Fox News hosts actually work for. Fox News, remember, is a propaganda arm of the Republican Party. They're meant to push Republican talking points. Now, the Republican Party is still running on a form of the Southern strategy, dividing people over race. And what they're doing is they're appealing to white racists. And they're now using white grievance politics and sometimes a subtle form of the great replacement conspiracy theories you're going to see in a different segment here, in order to scare people into supporting things like hardcore anti-immigration measures and to keep them distracted from economic policy. And they're using this culture war nonsense in order to do it. And so understand that that's what this entire thing is. It is a circus because these people want a circus to distract you from actually doing things that are going to help all of America. All right. We got more clown show. Let's go to Tom Tillis. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina recently channeled Glenn Beck, who during the confirmation hearing of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, with a flow chart and all. Interesting.
The point that I make here is that we've seen this ecosystem mobilize to support you, and I think, Judge Jackson, you said you haven't had any encounter with Demand Justice. I don't know if you've had any encounter with some of these. They're abbreviated, or I'm sorry, either acronyms or abbreviated, so I wouldn't expect you to. It would be interesting if we could, for the record, determine if you have had any interactions, but with respect—
I have not, Senator. I've never seen most of those.
That's good enough for me. I wouldn't expect you to be honest, sitting on the bench, but they are out there, and they have a specific plan.
Oh no, they're out there and they have a plan. And okay, so look, again, you see the flow chart, and again, it's reminiscent of Glenn Beck and his chalkboard, right, or his whiteboard. And so look, you've got Demand Justice, right, and then they want to pack the court, and so they're packing the court, or they want to pack the court, which of course, as a Supreme Court justice, you don't really have anything to do with. So why are you asking her about something that Congress does? And that's the thing. That's the theme that I've also seen. A lot of these questions from a lot of these Republican congressmen, she's had to answer with, I don't know. I'm not a member of Congress. I'm here to be a Supreme Court justice and interpret the law. That's it. But no, they keep bringing this up when it's literally their own job to legislate on these things. Okay, but anyway, but you can see he goes through this this whole thing. You got the Arabella group, right, and they're at the top, and then you got the Demand Justice, and you got the Tide Foundation. You see, and all those things. And see, here's what they've got. They're all connected by George Soros. Wait. Oh, see, you got Arabella that funds the 1630 fund, and they gave the money to the unrigged courts, and then they worked with Demand Justice, and then they got Demand Justice obviously being funded by George Soros. It all goes back to like this weirdo George Soros conspiracy theory. But look, hey, guess what? Rich people give money to causes. Yes, does George Soros fund some liberal organizations to lobby on politics? Yeah. You know what? That also happens on the right. A lot, actually. And so, look, I don't think that there should be any dark money groups, honestly. Even ones that do things that I agree with. And so, look, I want all the dark money. I want all the money. Dark money, light money, red money, blue money, green money, obviously green. I want it all out. I just want it all out. I actually want free and fair elections, and I want a system where money does not dominate politics. And so I think we should get all the money out, union money, corporate money, all that stuff, and we should have privately funded elections. And that's really it. Now, of course, here's the thing, right? I don't want anyone influencing our politics. But we come into the problem here with Tom Tillis pointing out these organizations, these dark money organizations, but only pointing out on one side, and that's on the liberal side, where, of course, the giant, vast majority of money is actually on the conservative side. And an example of that, of course, is the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank that not only donates large sums of money to the Republican Party, but they even write their own legislation. Model legislation, for example. In a private meeting last year with big money donors, the head of a sister organization, Heritage Action, boasted that they were responsible for the voter suppression law in Georgia. And so, again, these big money groups, they'll go in, they'll write model legislation, and usually that model legislation is for terrible things. And so this is an example. In fact, here's the head of that Heritage Action in a quote. In some cases, she said, "We actually draft them for them. Or we have a sentinel on our behalf, give them the model legislation so that it has grassroots from the bottom up type of vibe." So not actually grassroots, obviously. No. We're just making it look like that. We're making it look like it comes from the bottom up when in reality, it's top down. Now, an example of how much money, Mother Jones reported last year that the Heritage Foundation is spending about $24 million over 2 years in 8 battleground states, Arizona, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Nevada, Texas, and Wisconsin, to pass and defend restrictive voter laws. In fact, every Tuesday, that group leads a call with right-wing advocacy groups like the Susan B. Anthony list. I can make a flow chart myself over this. Tea Party Patriots, Freedom Works, to coordinate these efforts at the highest levels of the conservative movement. Jessica Anderson, executive director of Heritage Action for America, told the foundation's donors at an April 22nd gathering in Tucson, Arizona, in a recording obtained by the watchdog group, documented and shared with Mother Jones, that, quote, "We literally give marching orders for the week ahead. Also, we're singing from the same song sheet of the goals for that week and where state bills are across the country." So again, why is there not a flow chart of this? Well, there is. There are flow charts. But did Tom Tillis bring a flow chart of that? Did they talk about how SCOTUS justices that are sitting on their bench right now were supported by the Heritage Foundation? No, of course not. No, we got to bring up the whole thing about, these organizations, the Arabella Group, and all comes back to George Soros. Oh, yes. Now, look, let me tell you more about the Heritage Foundation for a second. They were co-founded back in 1973 by Paul Weyrich. Now, I bring him up because I like to bring him up. Whenever we talk about voting rights, he's the go-to guy. You know why? Because he's the guy that said openly, very openly, we don't want everyone to vote. And what are they doing? What is Heritage Foundation doing? They are trying to keep black people from voting. They're trying to keep as many people, as many Democrats from voting as possible so that they continue to win elections. That's what it is. He went on to co-found the American Legislative Exchange Council that gives all of these model legislation to lawmakers. Some that have just left the branding on, too, by the way. When they introduce this model legislation, they say, oh, look, here it is. I don't know, we didn't even bother to take the name off of it. Who cares? Nobody cares. They gave it to me, and I'm their bitch, and so I'm going to go, and I'm going to sign it, I'm going to introduce it, and we're going to pass it. And, of course, they also team up with the moral majority, headed by, formerly headed by Jerry Falwell. So now Heritage had received major funding from large right-wing donors such as Charles and David Koch, Richard Mellon Scaife, and Joseph Coors. And so my point is, again, you can make that same kind of flow chart when it comes to the right wing. Because you have all of these gigantic, and actually, it's even more insidious when you think about it from the right. And so here you go, right? You have all of this gigantic money, all of these donors on the right. And why do they give money to these conservative groups to pass this model legislation? Well, it comes down to what they actually stand for. Now, do you have people that are principled social conservatives? Sure, you have those, yes. But generally, the reason that it has so much corporate and billionaire money on the right wing is because you have the central tenet of the Republican Party being low taxes for rich people and less regulation for corporations. And that's really essentially what it is. And unfortunately, of course, that mindset also has allies within the Democratic Party who take money from similar donors or sometimes even the same corporate donors in order to try to stop progressive priorities like universal health care, free college, and things like that. And so that's what you have. You have this big network of dark money that has flooded both sides of the political aisle. And yet you got people like Tom Tillis just pointing out one side in order to, and this is what's important, in order to tie it to some weirdo conspiracy theory. And what conspiracy theory is that? Well, not only is it weirdo, but it's also anti-Semitic. It's Great Replacement. Now remember, Great Replacement claims that George Soros is funding immigrant caravans into the United States in order to crowd out white people and vote for Democrats, to replace white Americans or so-called real Americans. That's what this is about. He is doing this dog whistle. And by the way, this is also part of, again, QAnon belief, other conspiracy theories, white nationalist, white supremacist talking points. And so this is a dog whistle from Tom Tillis in a way that, of course, people that are plugged into these conspiracy theories that are pushed by right-wing media immediately pick up on. But for a lot of people, it tends to fly under the radar. But no, we see it. We see it for what it is. We see that. And so this is what's going on. This is, again, part of the culture wars and nonsense to try to have you ignore who's actually in charge. Which, by the way, who is really in charge, and this is not a conspiracy theory, corporate donors. Corporate donors who want low taxes, less regulation, and to prevent workers' labor unions. That's really it. And so understand that, yes, he's appealing to those insane people to try to get them to continue to vote for them in order to help themselves and their donors. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to the next insane conservative, this time from Indiana. Republican Senator Mike Braun stepped in it on Tuesday after he said the Supreme Court should just let the states decide if they want to ban interracial marriage.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
What about Griswold versus Connecticut?
Well, you can list a whole host of issues. When it comes down to whatever they are, I'm going to say that they're not going to all make you happy within a given state, but that we're better off having states manifest their points of view rather than homogenizing it across the country as Roe versus Wade did.
Oh, okay. We're better off. Who's we? For one, that's my question. Who's we? Who's better off? Certainly not voters of color. Certainly not people who want to be interracially married. So, okay. So let me just flat out point out how Mike Brown thinks that, oh, it's just fine if we let the court or reverse the right to abortion across the country, but also the right to get married to a person of a different skin color. And by the way, also allow states to ban gay marriage again. Again, that's just some of the decisions that would be impacted by this. A whole host of other issues that would be left to the state legislatures. By the way, a lot of states are controlled by Republicans. So basically, we would leave these civil rights issues, the right to privacy and equal protection under the law, they would be left to Republicans in states. Now, I'm not saying every Republican would be like, oh, yeah, we're definitely going to do that and get rid of those rights, yeah. But I'm saying that it's more likely in Republicans to happen. And so, look, theoretically, what you would end up having is basically two different, like every little state is its own little fiefdom with its own laws now and rights for people. So, for example, you could have abortions in New York, right? So legal in New York, it'd be illegal in California, Oregon, a handful of other states. And then in other states like Mississippi, Louisiana, you would have, Kentucky, no same-sex marriages, no abortion, no interracial marriages, and a whole host of other issues. This would be the result. That's a disaster. What that would be is the legalization of discrimination against racial and not just racial minorities, but also people based on the issue of gender identity and sex, as well as, who they're attracted to and who they want to marry. So that's disastrous. I mean, so many different horrible things would happen as a result of letting the states basically decide who gets rights and who doesn't. And so, look, understand that a lot of very large, important Supreme Court decisions have stepped in to stop that kind of discrimination because it was already happening. Again, Obergefell basically stopped states from discriminating against people who were gay and allowed them to get married. Roe was another decision, right? Where you had states that had already banned abortion and, yes, even contraception for women. And so that wasn't even legal up until the 1960s. And you also have interracial marriage, which, by the way, that was legalized in 1967 in Lovingview, Virginia. And so understand, these are not hypothetical situations where they were banned. No, Republican and generally Southern conservative states already banned these things. And then the court had to step in and say, actually, that's against the Constitution. That is unconstitutional. We need to protect people's rights, equal protection under the law, and privacy. And so that's the situation. And by the way, when you think about 1967, that is not that long ago. People are still alive from a time where, in some places, in the supposed land of the free, they were not allowed to marry someone of a different skin color, different race. And Mike Brown says, no. Oh, watch. You know, some of those decisions, I mean, it might not make some people in the state happy at all, but it's better than guaranteeing, or it's better to not guarantee everyone's rights, because that would be homogenizing. No, his argument is, we just want our states to be openly racist. And so, now obviously he got a lot of backlash for this. And so he came up with an excuse. You're going to love this one. He's like, oh, I didn't get the question. Oh, you know, I didn't. Here's his quote. Earlier during a virtual press conference, I misunderstood a line of questioning that ended up being about interracial marriage. Let me be clear on that issue. There is no question the Constitution prohibits discrimination of any kind based on race. That is not something that is even up for debate. Oh, really? You just brought that up for debate? And I condemn racism in any form, at all levels, and by any states, entities, or individuals. Yes, the Constitution does prohibit discrimination based on race, at least at the moment. But, you know, when Republicans are done with it, you better watch out. Remember, the whole purpose of the Supreme Court is to interpret whether the laws that are passed are in line with the Constitution, right? And so now, again, these decisions like Obergefell, Loving, and Roe are based on the 14th Amendment. For Roe, it's the right to privacy that is protected by prohibiting states from making laws that will infringe on your personal autonomy. And that's what it is, bodily autonomy. Your right to bodily autonomy as a woman, or your right as a same-sex person, or not even a same-sex person, but generally this is who it applies to, who you marry. Again, marriage, not from a religious standpoint, because there's actually two different types of marriage. That's marriage that's recognized by the church, and marriage that's recognized by the state. I don't care at all, you know, what the church says, right? If the church says, oh, you know, if you're a part of this religion, you can't marry that person or whatever, I don't really care. That to me is not binding. I don't give a shit. You can say that whatever you want. But what I'm worried about, what I'm concerned about, what I care most about is the state. Because that confers certain legal and financial rights. And Republicans do not want to respect that. And so much for pro-freedom, right? Now, as far as gay marriage, again, going to that, the Equal Protection Clause requires states to license a marriage between two people of the same sex, and the same clause applies to interracial couples. And so, again, this guy essentially admitted in the open that those decisions by the Supreme Court was a mistake made by activist judges. Now think about that. You're an activist judge by saying that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment applies to same-sex couples. That's insane. Why are they not equal under the law? You think they're lesser than you. That's why. You think they're lesser than you, and you think that you should be able to tell them what they can and cannot do, as far as who they can love, who they can marry. It doesn't make any sense. But again, they want to run your life. That's what the modern conservative movement wants to do. They want to run your life. They want to tell you exactly what to do based on their interpretation of their religious holy books. That's it. They don't care at all about your privacy or your rights or your freedom. Now, as far as their rights and freedom, well, and privacy, well, we absolutely care about our privacy, especially when it comes to who funds us. I mean, how dare you know who funds Republicans? But for us, I mean, I want to know what's in your bedroom. I want to know who you're having sex with. If you're a woman, I want big government all up in your womb. Really, this is the party of freedom? This is the party of freedom. The only freedom that they want is for people to be racist, and to control women's bodies. The freedom to control another person. That's what they want. And also freedom for corporations, but not for workers. No, no, no. This is who they are. Ron didn't misunderstand that question at all. No, in this case, his biggest problem is that he was too honest. And then realized that he was being too honest. But there is that old saying, you know, when people show you who they are, well, then you should believe them. All right. A couple more stories here. And then we'll get to some comments, so don't worry. Let's check in with the MAGA truckers. Apparently, they are still driving around Washington, D.C., and are starting to feel a bit under the weather. This is according to reporting from the Daily Beast. Participants in the so-called People's Convoy have come down with symptoms resembling COVID-19 while taking part in their demonstration that was supposedly against, ironically, COVID-19 health measures. Now, this is according to, again, the Daily Beast, Zachary Petrezzo, who has been following these truckers. Here's what he reported. Today out in Hagerstown, more and more truckers with the People's Convoy have complained about becoming sick with a bad cough. One streamer, OTR Survival, actually ended up going to urgent care. Oh, man. And described the illness as, quote unquote, getting hit by a bus. The report continues. While it is not clear what illness the truckers actually do have, a cough is often a telltale symptom of COVID-19. And many sufferers also complain about feeling as if they have been hit by a bus, truck, or some other large vehicle or even object. Interesting. All right. So look, a couple of thoughts here. Number one, I didn't know the truckers were still out there. That's news to me. Look, hey, once, the war in Ukraine, the Russians invaded Ukraine, and all that other stuff, Ketanji Brown Jackson, that confirmation hearing, the truckers just kind of disappeared. I mean, other than the occasional story of perhaps like a lone biker, a bicyclist, that was slowing down the Freedom Convoy, which is always fun. We haven't heard anything about them. Weird. Well, it's almost as if they don't matter at all. So then why am I talking about them? Well, to point out the hilarity. Because, look, the irony here is there are no mask or vaccine mandates federally. And most of the ones that are in the states have been removed. And so, look, what are you protesting against? Is there anything? If you're going to have a anti-COVID lockdown measure or anti-COVID, anti-mask, anti-vax protest, okay, but shouldn't you? I mean, if you're going to protest against those, shouldn't they actually exist first? I'm just saying. Now, so that's the irony, right? And look, secondly, I also wonder why they're out there when gas is really expensive. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you waste money driving around like a dipshit for no reason? But the biggest irony here is that you're protesting against non-existent COVID health mandates, and then you get COVID. Because unlike the mandates, COVID is very real. If only there was something they could have done that would have prevented getting COVID. Oh, right, we had that. The vaccine. Now look, and the vaccine numbers, this is kind of depressing, honestly, since the vaccine has been very, very readily available for the vast majority of the American people. In fact, up until recently, the COVID treatment and vaccines and stuff were free. Now, thanks to Republicans blocking federal funding, testing is no longer free. Uninsured people now have to pay out of pocket for the testing and the treatment, which again is going to harm a lot of Republicans, honestly, who have chosen not to be vaccinated. And right now, about 65% of the country is fully vaccinated. 30% are fully vaccinated and boosted, and about 80%, honestly, had at least one dose. So not fully protected against COVID-19. Now, thankfully, of course, the variant that's been going around, Omicron, happens to be less severe, but it spreads much more rapidly. So if you, and by the way, it's less severe if you've had your vaccine. And so it's much less, again, deadly than the Delta variant, but it still poses quite a risk to people who are unvaccinated. And so that's an issue for them. People who are fully vaccinated haven't had to worry as much. They're not as concerned of dying from COVID as many, as many were, at least during Delta. That said, many of us still choose to wear a mask. It's not generally mandated anywhere, but a lot of people choose to do so because they want to protect those who are not able to be vaccinated. People with pre-existing conditions, for example. And so now, in this group of truckers, however, I'm going to guess that the majority of them are not vaccinated. And of course, they have all sorts of conspiracy theories about it. And so as a result, they're getting sick. Now, of course, it just doesn't mean that they have COVID 100%. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But it just seems like a little bit more than a coincidence. You know, not being masked, not being vaccinated, congregating in large groups. And then suddenly getting sick out of nowhere? Yeah. It's almost as if, in my mind, they fucked around and found out. It's always fun when that happens. All right. One more for y'all. Truckers against so-called mandates. Yeah, 80 to 90% of truckers are vaccinated. I know this is a small fringe group of people, by the way. Most truckers are smart. Most truckers are good people. I would say the vast majority of truckers, and I respect the trucking profession. But, you know, these guys, not the smartest, tools in the shed. All right. Let's move on. Truth Social. It's been about a month since the launch of Donald Trump's very much hyped Twitter knockoff, Truth Social. Now, what's going on with Truth Social? Has the president been posting like a madman? No, it turns out not so much. In fact, the former president, since his first post on Truth Social on February 15th, he has posted nothing. Now, his first post was, "Get ready, your favorite president will see you soon." And then, nothing. What happened? Where are the truths? I'm sitting here and I'm waiting for Donald Trump to post the truths on Truth Social, and it's just not happening. Now, I thought the Truth Socials, look, again, the truths that are supposed to be like the tweets, I thought they were supposed to be coming. They're supposed to be flowing. But no, not happening. Why? Because Donald Trump has abandoned the app. Maybe that's because it's got a lot of problems, tremendous problems, big problems, and then it's probably a ghost town, honestly. No, when the service went live on February 20th, available only as an iOS app. So if you have an iPhone, that's the only people that are able to access it, people with iPhones. Well, that means, of course, you have to get an iPhone. You have to have an Apple. You can't do it for an Android, or access it on a on a PC, on a website or browser. And so, look, obviously, if you're not reaching a lot of people, you're not going to do very well, especially as a social media alternative. Now, that said, it's also had a lot of problems, outages, difficulties with sign up, bugs, and apparently nothing's been fixed, or at least nothing's really all that better. And so it's really kind of a disaster. It's sad, baby. They're just not good at the internet.
Internets.
It's just bad, very bad. Just like I said it would be. This is the Trump stakes of social media, or the Trump Airlines, or Trump University, or Trump Vodka, or basically anything Trump, really. And that the fact that it's either a failure or a scam, but generally both in this case. And so, look, not only is it a Twitter knockoff, because Trump got mad, he was banned from Twitter, so he decided to make his own Twitter, but with blackjack and hookers. But it's already funded by a blank check special purpose acquisition company. What is that? Basically, what it does is that it's a blank check company that raises money for a public IPO. Now, that public company, which produces nothing and has nothing, it just collects money. It is then supposed to merge with another company, giving it a lot of funding. So now the company itself is called Digital World Acquisition Corporation. And so it is an SPAC, and the thing about SPACs is that the initial investors, generally have no idea what this SPAC is going to merge with. Generally. Now, some people did find out, some initial investors, and they decided that it was, if it was connected with Trump in any way, that they were going to pull out. Not at all interested. Now, what's interesting, though, is maybe had those people stayed on for a little while at least, they might have actually been doing quite well. Right now, the stock is doing pretty good. Even though after the flurry of downloads when it was announced, the downloads, the amount of downloads has basically slowed to a trickle. But you have the stocks that are still doing incredibly well. And so now the thing is that this SPAC has not closed the deal. It has not done any acquisitions of any other company. And the reason is, for one, it's under investigation. So that's one of the problems, right? Now, assuming that it's no longer under investigation and nothing bad happens, right? Well, even then, the stock value of this company, once the acquisition is made, is expected to plummet. Why? Because that's generally what happens. Investors in a private investment in public equity company, in this case, have actually agreed to buy $1 billion worth of Digital World Acquisition shares that are free to sell when the deal closes immediately. These buyers got to purchase shares at $33.60 or lower if DWAC trades below $56. The PIPE deal hands these preferred investors a minimum of a 40% discount to the market price with no lockup agreement. So what that means is that if you're an initial investor here in the company, you're doing pretty good because you got to buy low and you get to sell high right after it closes the deal. It is your classic pump and dump. So they pump all this money into there, buying low, selling high. And when they dump all that stock, what do you think is going to happen to the value? Gone. Gone. And so now, if you buy, well, I mean, if you came into the game late and didn't get this special deal and you bought high, you're in for a world of pain. But if you're an initial investor, just like a Ponzi scheme or a multi-level marketing scheme. So, you're familiar with the multi-level marketing where, okay, you buy the initial investors. The whole thing is to get people to buy from you. And so if they buy from you and then start their own, so they're buying their product from you and it goes down and down the chain. You're not really selling anything. You're not really making money unless you're at the top of the pyramid. That's why they call it a pyramid scheme. And that's what this is. This SPAC is a pyramid scheme. So look, everybody who bought early knows this and stayed. They don't really believe that this company is going to go anywhere. The social media companies, by the way, don't generally make a lot of money in the first place. And so essentially what you have is people buying in on the idea that they're going to get in this pump and dump scheme based on celebrity, because there are a lot of Trump supporters that are more than happy to chip in. That said, the app is very limited, has a lot of problems, and as a result is an absolute wasteland. Look, honestly, and a lot of these social media companies, by the way, are also so-called free speech ones, are filled with Nazis. So then there's that. So looking at all of this, and the entire purpose behind this was just to raise money and get money for Trump and other investors close to Trump, you can understand why he's not posting a damn thing. Because when the founder of this company, of this social media site, doesn't even care enough to post to it, well, that's when you know it's bad. So, disaster baby. Also, fun.
Internets.
Big massive dumps.
The big massive pump and dump scheme. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Really, really appreciate it. Let's go to some of the comments here, super chats, and memberships. Straw Carpenter is a new member. Thank you for signing up. Appreciate that. Dango Bangle says, banning interracial marriage would also ban Jewish people from marrying non-Jewish people. It would ban Muslims from marrying non-Muslims too. Oh yeah, that's a good point. And of course, they have no problem with this. Virginia Thomas says, let the church say amen. And Jump James says, the truckers can't find the exit of the roundabout. Oh, that's why they couldn't leave. Gabby Mathis says, Roman Chekhov, a survivor of 4 different Holocaust camps, was killed this week in Ukraine. Yes. So, look, there's a lot of terrible, terrible news going on in Ukraine and the war. And so, of course, my heart goes out to all the innocent people that are caught in between. And thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for supporting the show. Will MC, thank you for the very kind $5. So, let's go over to Twitch here, where we had some stuff that happened. Kentucky Progressive Dragon, thank you for resubbing with Prime for 7 months. Appreciate that. 7 months of being a very stable genius for subbing with Bezos Bucks. Of course, that's what you can do when you subscribe with your Prime subscription. So that doesn't cost you any extra. You're paying with Prime, but it's Bezos money. So that's always fun. Old Man Ray, thank you for cheering 100 bits. Appreciate that. Toolman Tim, 51, says, I think I'm back after 13 days of retraining to go back to work. I ended up breaking my left arm due to the damage caused to my bones from cancer. Going to need surgery to fix it, and I'm on another 4-month medical leave. That's terrible to hear. I'm really, really sorry to hear that. That sucks. All I can do is say I hope the best for your speedy recovery, so you can get back to life. I'm sorry to hear that. So, but thank you for resubbing with Prime. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the hype train, by the way. Apparently we've been boosted by something. I don't know what that means. Tempa Day 918, thank you for resubbing for tier 1 at 15 months. Thank you. I really appreciate that. All right. So, Bob Bassett is raising funds for masks in Ukraine. If anybody's interested in donating. Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of people doing, fundraisers and things like that for Ukraine. I think that's great. Not only that, but Jordan Ewell is doing a fundraiser for Yemen. So let's not forget about what's going on in Yemen as well. Saudi Arabia still at war with Yemen, still bombing Yemen. There are still people that are starving, that need help, that need funding. Yes, Ukraine, very important as well, but let's not forget about Yemen. And so that's what Jordan Ewell is doing a fundraiser, and I think that's fantastic. So, everybody go and help out with that. Help out with not only Ukraine, if you can, but with Yemen. Oh, great. He reached his goal. Wonderful. But just because he reached a goal doesn't mean that there's more that can't be done. But I'm really, really very glad to see that. All right. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head out. Thank you all. Appreciate you. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you tomorrow.
Internet.
Get in a long queue with a bunch of demons.
Clean coal, meaning to take it out cold, they're going to clean it.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat. Oh no! Disappointed!
Obama!
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.